because everybody's going to transition. It's not really a question of if, it's a question of when and how. For the majority, they think they're going to sell their business. But what we're finding is that a lot of people get to that point, go to market, and they can't get the number they need to be able to actually exit their company. And that's a real problem in our industry. It's one of the things that keeps me up at night.
Hey guys, Damien Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Cerbosity. Today, I have a special treat for you. I have the godfather of MSPs, Arlin Sorenson. For those of you who don't know who he is, might be hiding under a rock. He built his MSP, sold it in 2012, $17 million, 100 employees, and credits most of that growth to peer groups. He also started the very peer group we're talking about, HTG, or now Evolve peer groups. And it's the largest peer groups there are in the world. There's perhaps no person better connected to the MSP industry to see the broader view and who can tell us how to grow and what we need to do. If you want to unlock how to unlock legacy and lasting value in your MSP, don't miss out on my conversation with Arlin today. Arlin, unless they're hiding on a rock, they probably know of you. But for the folks that don't, many people have mentioned that you're in some ways the, kind of the godfather of managed services and the industry. And not only were you early, but, with your peer groups and all the things. So why do you think people say that? And maybe a better question is, why do you keep showing up and helping?
Well, the reality is I'm an old guy in this industry. I got in early, and I've always believed in the importance of community. So I've been plugged into a lot of things. But I grew up on a farm here in Iowa, somewhat isolated from the world. Farmers are, kind of do their own thing. But when technology bit me back in 1982, that's when I decided I don't have all the answers around tech. I went to school to be a farmer, and
oh, really?
I graduated with a degree in farm operation from Iowa State, and came back to the family farm with my dad and brother for the first 8 years, and then I bought an Apple II Plus, and the rest is history. I fell in love with that little machine and decided to take the technology route while my brother decided to stay on the farming side. So we were 50-50 partners in everything we've done. And that allowed us to really take, the operational roles and make the decisions, and knowing that whatever I decided was going to not only impact me, is going to impact him 50% in the same way as he would on the farm. So it's been a great partnership and really has served us well over the years. But, community's been a big part, Damien, of me figuring out what to do. The first time, interestingly, just today, I had a conversation with Harry Brailsford, who started SMB Nation back in the early 2000s. And I went to that event, again, as part of the community to learn. And that's where I first heard about the whole idea of managed services.
Wow.
Over the journey, we went from break fix to, having some regular visits. They weren't managed services. They were just regular checkups with customers. And, it was in the early 2000s when this whole idea of, fixed fee services came to be. And I heard it first at SMB Nation. And it was a very foreign concept to everybody at the time. How can you possibly deliver services when you don't know how much time it's going to take and all the things? Because we didn't have RMM tools or any of those things back in those days. It was get in the car and go show up.
Yeah.
But, the concept was right. And, it took us a few years to kind of figure out how do you price this thing so you don't go broke servicing customers. But over time, tools began to come out to help us. And so that's why I get labeled as the godfather, because I was there kind of back in the beginning. And, I've really worked hard to try to help people adopt that model, and because it is a valuation creator for business. Anytime you got a recurring monthly revenue product where it's somewhat predictable, that's the kind of businesses that people want to buy. And so value creation is a big part of what I'm focused on trying to help partners do, because everybody's going to transition. It's not really a question of if, it's a question of when and how. And for the majority, they think they're going to sell their business. But what we're finding is that a lot of people get to that point, go to market, and they can't get the number they need to be able to actually exit their company. And that's a real problem in our industry. It's one of the things that keeps me up at night. Service leadership benchmarks, several thousand partners, and almost 20% of them lost money last quarter.
Wow.
I can tell you that you multiply a negative number for evaluation. I don't care if you get 100x. If it's below zero, it's bad news.
Yeah.
And there's a ton. There's only about a quarter of our industry that's doing really well. Middle half's kind of doing okay. But the bottom quartile, they're losing money. And that's not a sustainable kind of exit strategy.
Yeah. You said that something that keeps you up at night. Why is that?
Well, because I care. I love this industry. I love the people. The people in this industry are amazing. And, we've seen through the peer groups that everybody wants to help everybody. The go-giver mindset just kind of permeates our industry. And so, I want to see people succeed. I realize that it's hard work. Running an MSP is not a simple process or easy task. So the fallacy that I find too many people have is, if I just get up and work hard every day, someday I'm going to have something I can sell that somebody will write me a check for. And that's just not true. People don't buy hard work. I mean, you can make your own hard work. You don't have to go buying it. But that's the mindset. There's going to be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow someday, just because I got up and went to work and I sacrificed, ball games and anniversaries and parties and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But they're not focused on creating value. And that's really a critical mistake that I lose sleep over.
What's the issue there? Like, what's the gap?
Mindset. Too many folks in the IT industry are technically genius. They can fix anything. But when it comes to running a business, they don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
They want to be the hero that goes out and saves the customer. But that's not a financially sustainable thing unless you charge appropriately. So, a lot of partners I talk to feel guilty charging the appropriate levels to their customers. They just want to fix it and help people, use tech, that's noble, but it's not the way you create value that you someday will be able to cash in on. So it's all starts in our heads, and that's one of the values of peer groups. When you look at people's financials together and you see that, hey, Damien's doing really well and I'm not doing really well, what's the difference? What do I need to do to change? And almost always it starts right up here in our minds. And so if we can adjust that and then learn how to really run a business and manage it, spend time on the business, not just in the business. It's not rocket science, but it does require us to really think about it differently.
Is that willingness to charge more and that guilt or fear, or do you think it's a bigger? It's that I'm not really running a business. I'm focused on being the savior or something else.
I think a lot of it is just not focused on, but some of it is not understanding the basics of how business works. In the MSP world, service gross margin is really the most important factor that people need to keep an eye on. I talk to partners that can't even tell me what that means. How do you even calculate service gross margin? And if it's not good, what do I do about it? How do I actually fix it? And as much education as we've done over the last 25 years, there's still, new partners coming in all the time that don't understand the basics of business. And so that's really an area that, people need to spend some time at. It's not rocket science, but it does require you to learn some things that are not, how do I fix this or that? It's how do I actually make a company that's sustainable and can grow and create value.
I'm seeing, and I've been fortunate enough to interview a lot of MSPs, and I'm seeing what I perceive as a trend where there's a lot of people that, you fell in love with technology, and I fell in love with technology, and that's the stereotypical.
Yeah.
But there's somebody I was talking to that was really just about service. They didn't call themselves tech. Others are more sales or business oriented. So that, to me, there's kind of it's not replacing, but I see there's a new, for lack of a better way, a new breed, and it feels like they're not getting wrapped around the axle the way that us technical folks do.
Right.
Because they look at it more from a business perspective or a service delivery perspective.
Well,
have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other areas that I see all the time is that a lot of business owners don't want to sell. They spend a lot of money trying to hire salespeople without having an adequate even idea what it means to have a salesperson, because you got to manage them, right? Everybody wants the unicorn that will just come in and just automatically take care of everything all by themselves. They don't need marketing support. They don't need, any of that stuff. They do. There's very few unicorn salespeople that don't need to be managed. And
if they exist, they wouldn't need you.
That's exactly right. They'd be running their own company. So, that's again, it's another mindset thing. Owner-led sales is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And it has to happen until you get to a point where you can justify hiring a salesperson and putting marketing support in place and all the other things to make it successful. And, that number is getting bigger and bigger from my perspective. I used to say, if you're doing $3.5–4 million, maybe you can hire a salesperson. Now I'm saying $5 to $7 million before you can really make that work. And that's not what owners want to hear. Why? Because they cost more, right? And if you get a good salesperson, he's probably going to make more than you are as an owner, which some owners really struggle with, but that's a good thing. That's why you hired them in the first place, was to be able to sell. So it's a mindset issue. The companies I see where owners just embrace the reality that, hey, I am going to be the closer for the time being, and I'm going to embrace that so I can grow my way out of that role. Those are the folks that do well. The ones that just say, hey, I'm gonna go hire somebody. I'll do it on the cheap because I really don't want to pay them that much. And, 60 days later, they've not sold anything and they get fired, and, I'm going to go hire another one. And it's just a cycle. And it's all because the owner's mindset's wrong and they're not really thinking through what it takes to be successful.
Take me through your MSP. About what size did you guys get to, and what was the size and scale and year you exited?
So I started the IT company in 1985. First 5 years, it was just me, and I was still farming, so I was doing it nights and weekends, kind of thing. 1990, I hired my first employee, which was a life changer, because now all of a sudden I had to manage somebody, and we had to actually have a plan and do the things you need to do.
Payroll was a thing.
Payroll became a thing. And, we started to do education. That was my marketing approach, was get them into a class, teach them how to run the farm accounting package we sold and Microsoft Works at the time, which was word processor database spreadsheet. And if we got them in class, they always bought a system from us. So we would do 8-week classes. We could hold 10 couples per class. And while we taught the next class, I was installing the 10 machines we sold from the last class. And it worked like a charm. 1993, I hired my first technician besides myself. And by 95, we had grown to 5 people. So it was not a rocket ship ride. It was a slow, painful process. 95, Windows 95 came out, right? And it changed everything.
It did.
So we went from 5 people to 13 people in 95. And that's a definition of chaos in my world, because we didn't have anything written down. It was all in my head. And I could talk to 4 other people, and kind of manage it. But when we got to 13 people, it was a disaster. So we built our own PSA actually in Microsoft Access.
Well, what time period was this that you went through that?
It was in 95, 96.
So, but in a year or two.
Yeah, we grew from 5 to 13 in 1 year in 1995.
Wow. Yeah, the wheels will come off if you're not ready for that.
The wheels did come off. Fortunately, one of the guys on the team was an Access programmer, so he built us a PSA so we could actually keep track of what was going on.
Nice.
But from 95 to 2000, we grew significantly because we expanded our area of coverage. So we started to open some satellite offices, and we grew to about 25 people during that last 5 years of the decade. And we got to Y2K, and being the genius operator I hired an additional 13 engineers the last quarter of 1999 because.
And how many did you have when you made that decision?
I had 25, and I hired 13 more.
Wow.
And the reality is Y2K didn't come to Iowa at all. There was nothing. And so Q1 of 2000, we were bleeding cash really bad. And we got to April, and at one of our management team meetings, we were talking about, what are we doing wrong? What is wrong? This was supposed to be the greatest IT event in history, and there's nothing. And one of my guys said, we need to talk to some other companies. I mean, we're just not getting it. So we called 3 other companies around Iowa and said, can we get together and talk about what you're seeing? They all agreed, and we learned that day that nobody had any Y2K business, which then gave me the assurance that I had to go back and reduce staff. It was the one time in my career where we did a significant layoff. And we let those 13 people go that we had just hired, which was painful for them and for us. We got down to right-sized again with 25 folks and started to rebuild. The truth was that we got stuck at about $4 million, hit that in 1997, 8, 9, 2000, 2001. And I was really frustrated. I could not figure out how to break through and move to the next level.
Yeah.
And so I decided to do acquisitions as the approach to try and move the needle. And so we did a couple small ones that they went okay, but they didn't really move the needle. But in 2002, we found a company in Joplin that we had known for a while, very similar culture, a good-sized company. They had a dozen or so folks, and we did a cashless merger with them at the end of 2002, and that really started to move us on the path to growth again. Because I got 2 very important people as part of that process. I got a financial guru, and I got a sales guru. They were able to come in and really shore up our company in two areas that we weren't all that good at, and got us a foundation of a leadership team so we could begin to scale. And then we did an additional half a dozen acquisitions over the next 10 years or so to grow us to where we were when we sold back at the end of 2012. At that time, we had grown to about 100 people, doing about 17 million in revenue, and wasn't really planning to sell. Although when we had started back in 2002, we had said, "Hey, let's make this a 10-year run." And it just worked out that way. It wasn't really because we had a great plan to do it. But a telco in Iowa here called us and said, "Hey, we'd like to buy your business." And that was back before selling a business was really all that, public. And so I didn't know what I was doing. But they gave us an offer that was fair, and we were kind of tired and ready to move on. I had the peer group stuff going by then, so I had a place to go, and so we sold the company and began to really focus on growing the peer group side of things.
So, and I guess at some point had you transitioned to managed services?
We did. We started the transition in 2005. And, over the next couple of years, we kind of got it dialed in. We were a VAR, really, that sold managed services. It never was, the majority of our business. We served tons of schools and commercial businesses across the heartland. But we had grown the managed services side of the business to about $5 million by the time we exited.
Well, the reason I ask is I don't know how many $17 million bars or $5 million managed service businesses existed in that era, right? I'm not saying you were the largest, but you were building those peer groups. I'm guessing you were one of the largest, if not the.
We were one of the larger ones, yes, for sure. And we had made more mistakes than most people.
Right. Is it true that the HTD peer groups started almost by accident during that Y2K crisis?
It started by accident for sure. We were trying to figure out what we were doing wrong and save our own bacon. And once I saw the power of peer groups, I never had a plan to grow beyond one group. That was our goal. How do we get 12 companies that are willing to get together so we can learn from them? And it took us 5 years to get there. It wasn't a motivation to go out and find more companies. We just kind of waited till they came to us, and so it took 5 years to get to 12. Then at the SMB Nation event in 2006, I did a presentation about our peer group, and when I got done speaking, I had 60 owners that came up and said, "We'd like to be in your peer group." And it was like, well, we're full. We don't have any space for that. But I took their names on a waiting list, and we went back and talked about it and decided, well, maybe let's start another one and see if it'll work. So we started actually 2 more in 2006, and we still had a long waiting list of companies. It worked pretty good for me at that point because I was facilitating all 3 groups. We did 4 meetings a year, so I had 1 meeting every month, basically. But when we got to the next level, or we had a bunch more, it was, I can't keep facilitating all the groups, so what are we going to do? So again, in my genius leadership mindset, I said, I got a leadership team. I'll just have them facilitate peer groups. And that's what we did. We went from 3 groups to 9 groups in 2007, and I asked my leadership team to facilitate 1 or 2 groups. And this is while we were doing acquisitions. We did our largest acquisition in 2006. So we were in the integration mode, growing these peer groups, and my leadership team came to me at the end of 2007 and said, "We can't do this. We can't. You're going to kill us trying to do all this stuff." And they were right. It was too much. And so then we made a pivot and went to having a member in each group be the facilitator, which kind of worked, but we kind of lost control of the culture a little bit. So we went back to staff facilitation back in 2009, and began to recruit folks to be facilitators that had exited the company and wanted to give back. And that's really the core of our facilitation team today. We've got about 60 facilitators globally, and the majority of them are MSPs that have exited successfully and just want to help others be successful.
How did growing up on this 3,000 acre Iowa farm influence how you lead?
Well, I mean, farmers have to kind of be good at a lot of things, but not necessarily a master of any of them. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's kind of been the way I've operated companies in general. I just try to figure it out, and that's how I led my IT company. That's how we did the peer groups. It's how the ag tech company came to be. It's see a problem and then figure out a solution. And more often than not, that meant finding somebody else that was an expert that I could talk to or get involved to help. But farmers have the craziest jobs in the world, in that the two major factors that control your destiny, the weather and the markets, you have absolutely zero control over. Mm-hmm. So you go out in the spring and you put, $1,000 an acre into the ground, hoping it'll come up, and then hoping that there'll be a market that takes that outcome and delivers you some return. Yeah, it's a bigger gamble than going to Vegas and putting quarters in a slot machine.
And a lot more work.
Yeah, a lot more work. But that really helped me in terms of risk management, because you can't be risk averse and be a farmer. So when I was running an IT company and other things, over my career, I've started 20 some companies, and you can't be risk averse and be doing those kind of things. I'm a serial entrepreneur that didn't know when to quit. My dad was definitely an entrepreneur, and so that definitely rubbed off on me. But farming really gave me a foundation to build from, and it allowed me to start a business while I still had the farming income to support me. So that was a big advantage. And through that, we had banking relationships and things that allowed us to grow the IT side basically on the back of the farm.
That's really interesting. If I didn't grow up as a farmer, so it's hard to see some of those angles. It's really cool how you've done that. Tell me a little more. You said 22 companies you've started?
I have. Companies or business units. That when I see a problem or a challenge, my mind immediately goes to, okay, how can we fix it? How can we solve it? But then how do you monetize that or create a system that will help people be successful? And so, over the years, I've started some things looking back that were just plain not a good idea. But, there weren't a lot of people in my life that would say no to me. Now, the good news was that my partner that I brought on from Joplin, that was a financial guru, she did not have any problem saying no to me. So that kind of kept the IT business kind of inside the rails, which was really good. I pulled a few things off that shouldn't have happened in terms of getting involved in businesses that didn't materialize. But a lot of the things that I did were just problem-solving attempts, right? Back in the early 90s when I started the ag tech business, there were cutting-edge things that were happening out there that I always tried to be the guy that goes to where the puck was going to go, not where it was. So we decided to go ahead and create this ag tech company And one of the projects that we took on was flying over cropland and taking pictures so that we could evaluate the health of the crop by the color of the crop. And we spent a lot of money building a platform. Talked to my friend into letting me cut a hole in the bottom of his airplane so we could mount the thing and go up and take pictures. We took thousands of acres of pictures, and the theory was really good. Nobody bought any. We never sold one picture, and we spent tens of thousands of dollars many times over making it happen. And, I didn't know that I should do some market testing and actually talk about, this brilliant idea and see if anybody else cared, because they didn't.
Right.
So, there were things like that. The funnest one that we ever tried was called ugliestshirts.com. And, I'm a big believer that, when you go to an event, you don't want to just blend in with the crowd. So
Right.
we created all these crazy shirts, bright colors, bold statements, and I'd make my employees wear them. Some of them didn't really want to, but they did. And everybody knew that we were at the show or the event when we showed up. And I thought that would be a marketing thing that people might latch on to. We did sell some shirts, but it really wasn't a business that ever went anywhere. So outside of our own use, which had value in my perspective, it was one that just kind of fizzled away over time. So
You've said in the past that I think in the 90s, the business life, that something like you used to check your faith at the door.
Yeah.
And I think you realized that wasn't you.
It wasn't me at all. It was one of those lies that I bought into that, told me you can't run a successful business if you have, a visible faith. People aren't going to buy from you. They're not going to want to do business with you. And that wasn't true at all, first of all. But I bought into it, and, my office is on the end of my house, so it's a very short commute. But I went through that door between business and home and said, I'm just going to check my faith when I walk through the door. I'm not going to pretend I'm not a believer, but I'm not going to really let that show. Right. If somebody asks me, I'll tell them, but I'm not going to be visible about it. And the problem for me came when I would go back home. I'd forget to pick up my faith, and over time, I just kind of lost my way and lost track of it. It created issues in our marriage. It created issues with my kids. It created issues with the community because I was trying to live two different lives. You can't really do that. At least I couldn't do that. And so I just got totally confused and messed up. And it was in 2000 that kind of it all came to a head. And it was like, God just whacked me upside the head and said, you can't be successful doing this. So I had a major focus, I guess, to get back to what I knew my real roots were in Christ, and kind of rebuild my life the way it should be. And it was a year-long journey. Getting the right mentors in my life again, and getting help.
So when God was telling you need to get your life in order, sometimes he speaks in different ways. Like how did he speak to you?
Well, one of the big ones was we got in financial trouble. And I already talked about the impact of Y2K. Along with that, I got pretty confident in our ability to sell stuff when we really didn't have a sales force. And so, distribution was having all kinds of specials toward the end of 2000 or 99, again, to get ready for Y2K, which I had bought into wholly. And we had an inventory room filled with about $750,000 of inventory that I thought we were going to blow through in the first quarter of 2000. And it was still sitting there, after months. And the bank was starting to really put some pressure on me. And, I'd never really experienced that before. And so, financially we were struggling. That was back in the day when eBay was just kind of coming up. Mm-hmm. And we were, again, this is a God thing from my perspective. We were able to sell almost all that inventory. We sold it at cost, but we got rid of it without a big loss over about a 3-month period. Wow. And it was an amazing thing. But financially, relationally, we were struggling as a couple because I was just lost. I was wandering in the wilderness, and so I had to really work at rebuilding, the family and the marriage, and earn back trust. My wife's, she's not quite as risk willing to take as me. And so when we got into financial issues, it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So there was just a lot of things that had fallen off the rails basically. And methodically, God kind of helped me see the light and then put people in my life to help me get it back on track. And I haven't looked back since. I'm, unashamedly willing to put my faith out there, not to beat somebody over the head with a Bible, but just to live who I am. And, sometimes people don't like it, but it's still who I am.
Yeah. What changed in you when that happened?
A desire to actually live the life that I knew God wanted me to live. To be a Christ follower that was a leader in his home and in his business, and to do things God's way. The thing I've really learned over the years is God's principles always work. It doesn't matter whether you believe them, whether you even know that you're living them. It always works. Always. Yeah. And so that's what I really started to understand was I just need to get in the Bible and I just need to understand what God said, because if he said it, it's going to happen. And so that really revolutionized kind of the way I thought about my faith and how it fit into the marketplace is, God's principles are going to always be successful. If you understand what they are, you've got a big advantage because you can kind of understand what matters and what doesn't to him. And so that was really the shift I made. I got back in the Word. I tried to study it. I began to write all the time. So, I was never much of a journaler or a blogger or any of that kind of stuff, but it helped me to learn by writing things down, because when it goes through your fingers, you got to have thought through it some. And so I started doing some writing back in 2000, and it was in 2004 that I got serious about doing it on the computer and started to share it with people. And that has grown and become a discipline that, I've been very, very focused on. Starting in 2008, I had a guy in my Bible study that, was challenging me. He said, you talk about wanting to have quiet time daily. You're only writing 3 or 4 times a week. If you're really serious about it, you need to do it every day and 6 days a week. And so since September of 2008, I have written every day except on Sundays for the last 17 years, without missing any days. Even if I'm in the hospital or whatever, I'm still putting out something every day. And that discipline really changed my life. The fact I'm in the Bible, the fact that, I'm writing things down and thinking through it, I'm always looking for something that somebody else has put out there that I can share. But the discipline, that 20-mile march that Jim Collins talks about, this is at the top of my list, is just share daily what God's doing. And I tell people that are on my list, if you read everything I put out there, there's something wrong with you, because there's way too much for anybody to consume. I write it for me. Technology allows me to share it without a lot of effort, and so I share it with people that want to read it. But the thing I find is God uses it. Somebody may not have read for the last month, but all of a sudden they take a look and it's like, oh, that is exactly what I needed to hear. That's the challenge that I needed to be challenged with. That's the way I pray with God is, it's yours. Use it however you want. I'm going to write it just because it helps me to stay focused.
Yeah. So for folks that are listening, how do they find that?
We can put a link in here for folks to sign up and be part of it. It's a private blog that I post. I don't put it out online. I do put the scripture stuff out online publicly, but the other things that are in there are something that you get in a daily newsletter from me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. I remember when I learned that you were writing this years ago, and I signed up, and I didn't know what my expectation was, but I also said, I was surprised that you could keep it up for 6 days a week. Not too many people do those sort of things. And, but like you said, I don't read all of them. Right. But when I go read, there's a reason God's calling me to see, whatever, I think it was Deuteronomy 32 today, right? Whatever you put out. And was there a time in your life where you kind of realized the pressure wasn't on you?
Well,
to spread the word?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just an instrument, right? And that's the way I think of myself. Whether I'm writing that daily email or sitting at my desk working on whatever, I just, I'm always asking God to use me as an instrument. I want to be His hands and feet. I want to serve the way that He calls and leads, and I don't want to be out there trying to figure it out on my own, because I know I can't do that. And so He continues to put me in different positions and places to do impact in different ways. I just recently got asked to be an elder in our church, and I have kind of been out of the game in the trenches for a number of years, but He's called me back, and so I'm starting that journey now and relearning how to lead a flock of people. And leadership in business is one thing. Leadership in a church, that's a whole different story.
Yeah. It's not the same thing, but I remember just leading any group of folks that are volunteer versus in business. Right. They don't work for you. They're not receiving a paycheck. Like, there's a very big difference.
Well, and the reality is, in the church, I view it my role as being a servant leader, to come alongside the people that are in the trenches doing the work, and encourage and support them every way I can. And but you're right, churches are probably the most amazing area of leadership there is in our society, because it's all volunteer. There's really not a lot of commitment per se, written down for sure, but people show up every week and make things happen.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. What changed in how you lead business when you quit checking your faith at the door? How did you live that out? How do you?
I'm a believer in really looking for opportunities to serve as a major part of leadership. And when I think about Jesus and how He led and what He did, he wasn't spending his time sitting in the synagogue all day. He was in the marketplace with people, and that's kind of my mindset. I'm a big believer that marketplace ministry is where God's called me. How do I impact the people that I rub shoulders with all day, every day? And that's where the peer groups have been so fulfilling, because I get to rub shoulders with hundreds of people constantly, and it opens the door for conversation. And people are all hurting. We all have got challenges and issues, and there's opportunity to encourage and provide some guidance and leadership at times to help people work through those challenges. And when I look back at my life and my career, Damien, I've helped a lot of people make a lot of money in their businesses, which is great. I mean, that's part of it. But if I had to highlight the top, 100 things that I've done, money wouldn't be on there. It would be relationships that I've been able to help influence, and marriages that we've helped to be restored, relationships with kids and families that were totally obliviated that have been restored. I mean, those are the things that matter. I've never, I've had the opportunity to spend time with folks, on their last days and hours. I've never heard one of them say, "I wish I would have worked more. I wish I would have made more money." That's not ever the conversation. It is, man, I wish I would have had more time with my kids, or with my wife, or with our friends. That's the kind of stuff that matters, and that's where faith and life intersect. There is it's about people, and I've always said that no matter what our business, we're in the people business, we're in the relationship business. People are what really matter, and how we serve them is important, and so that's where I try to bring faith and work together. Is just pay attention to the people you're serving and look for ways to help them on their journey. The door's open every day. There's no question. If you just look, it's not hard to find.
It reminds me of the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few.
Right.
You often stress planning for legacy. You're encouraging that. Leaders, you've got a group, I think, dedicated to it. What do you want your legacy to be?
We're focused on creating a foundation, with our kids and grandkids, based on faith. So I want them to have an active relationship with Christ, and be living that out. And I know as parents and grandparents, we can't always control that, but we can influence it. And so, that's definitely a big part of it. God's blessed us somewhat financially, so we've just set up a family foundation to enable the next generations to be able to share some of that on things that matter. Some ministries that we can support and help continue to grow. One of my frustrations with money and ministries has been they don't always know how to actually use the money well. So, we've been privileged to have a couple of good exits that we were able to share some of that money with, but we've been a little frustrated with how it actually got executed and used. So with the foundation approach, we can put money aside, we can tithe and make that available, but we don't have to necessarily give it all away at once. And so that's part of the legacy that we're working through right now, actually, is how do we decide where to give and how to give and follow God's leading on that. The businesses that we've got, currently in place, both our kids are involved with the peer groups and the S2S legacy groups and the consulting stuff that we're doing. So, that's going to carry on through the next generation for sure. So there's a lot of kind of facets to what we're trying to do from a legacy perspective. But at the end of the day, we want to set them up for success to be able to live a life that's pleasing to God and can impact the people around them.
I know you do mentor a lot of the next generation's leaders. What's one piece of advice you find yourself giving younger MSP owners?
Well, you've got to invest in yourself. I think certainly I was guilty, and I think a lot of owners are, of believing that they're the smartest person in the room. They always have the right answer, and they don't really need to expand their skills and abilities because they're in charge. And the truth of the matter is the guy in charge needs to work more than ever to continue to get better because he is in charge. And so, I've always been frustrated with partners that they're willing to spend thousands of dollars to invest in their people, to go to technical trainings and learn things technically. But if they wanted to spend $99 to go to one of those all-day leadership training seminars, we don't have time or money for that. It's just totally wacky the way that we think about it. But you got to invest in yourself, which means you need to really know who you are. And if you have a faith story, you need to really tie that in to what you're trying to do. But there's so many positive things to learn out there on the leadership side. It is a skill, Leaders are not born, they're made. And we may have some natural talent and ability, but if we want to be great leaders, we have got to learn and continue to grow. And, so that's the kind of thing that I would encourage. Companies get stuck because they don't have leadership. That's usually the end of the road for a lot of companies. They hit a lid, they're not willing to grow and take it further, so they just get stuck. And that's a huge part of our industry. And when I have a conversation about leadership with them, my number one question is, do you have a budget for it? Most don't. Are you willing to give people time to actually go learn? Most won't. And it just bites them because these folks that they're going to depend on to help lead the company going forward aren't equipped and trained. And we take our best service person and we make them the service manager. Well, that's usually the worst thing you can do because they probably don't want to be a manager, number one. And number two, they have no skill set to do it. But that's what we do. We throw them in there. They struggle. They may fail. And, we're frustrated. We got to invest in our people. It starts with us. Is
there a piece of advice you would give a young MSP owner, maybe new to peer groups versus a veteran MSP owner?
Well, get in a peer group. That's number one. You're not going to know all the answers, but if you get yourself in a group of trusted people that are vested in each other in a good peer group, you're going to learn all kinds of things. And, if we just identify one thing every quarter that we need to go execute and implement in our business, and we actually do that, within 2 years, you have a very different company on your hands. Far more successful, far more advanced, far more mature. You don't have to go away with a whole long list of things because you can't do a whole long list of things. You just got to identify one or two things every time you go to a meeting, and it will change the trajectory of your business and your life. I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. So that's foundational. You got to invest in your business, not just work in it, but spend time on it, which is a discipline for young people that's tough when you're starting out. You want to spend every hour you have trying to make money. Well, that's important, but it's not the most important thing. You've got to spend time running the business and working on it. And it's a discipline that you've got to build. So it's part of the 20-mile march you've got to adopt.
Yeah. So I think I've got this right, but something like 35 or so years in IT now?
I started in 85, so we're at 40 years.
We're at 40 now. What's something in the MSP industry that still worries you or keeps you up?
The fact that a huge number of people are not making any money. They're not going to. There's no exit. I mean, I had a call in the last couple of weeks from a friend of mine that was in the peer groups a long time ago, and dropped out. He said he didn't have time to actually go back and use what he learned, so he thought it was not a good investment of his time and money. But he called me and said, I just found out I've got a serious health problem, and I need to sell this company. And we talked for a while. I asked him to share kind of his financials, and he's been doing this for almost 30 years now. Okay, and he had grown it to a little over $2 million. It had fallen off recently because of his health thing. So he had about $150,000 of revenue, doing about 10% to the bottom line. Okay, so making or $1.5 million, making $150,000 a year, and he said it's been what we've needed. I've been able to feed my family, educate my kids, take care of the bills. I'm trying to go to market now, and I can't get anywhere close to what I need. We haven't really had enough to save along the journey. So I was planning on this business being a big pot of gold that would take us through the rest of our life. And, how do I fix it? And it's like, it's not a fast fix. There's no magic bullet here that's going to turn this thing into what you need it to become. And so it's those kind of stories, Damien, that really are the problem in our industry. And it's important that people just getting started start with the attitude that we need to make a profit. We need to save some of that money, which is not the American way, but it is the right way. And we need to create value. And so someday we will have an opportunity to have an exit that will support what we want to do. And so, he ended up giving his business to a friendly competitor with the agreement that if there was profit that would come out of that, he would share some of that back to this guy. But, the reality was he was completely undercharging. So when the new MSP stepped in and raised the price, half the customers vanished. But he did share some of what he was able to recover, and is going to continue to do that to help this guy out. But we gotta really get focused on creating value, and it starts with driving bottom line profitability, but building the right leaders in your organization. If you want to be valuable to the market, it's got to run without you, because you're not going to stay forever if you're selling it. So that's a big part of it. Having the right discipline around your contracts and how you do your due diligence preparation is important. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's value creating, but it's not something you can just fix in a few weeks or months or years. It takes time, and the discipline of doing it right all the way along is what I would wish for any new MSP. You are going to transition someday. You're going to have to do it. It's a lot easier to do it as you go than get to the end and have a scramble to try to do it.
I've talked to so many MSPs on the other end that maybe their size you're talking about, they're paying their bills, but they're not, exactly wealthy.
Yep.
But they don't want to give it up, and they're often 65 or 70 or so, And I'm not saying there's an age you have to retire, but they've managed to run their business so that they're like, well, I don't know, what would I get for it? What I make in a year, I might as well stay and get 3 or 4 more years out, or 5 more, and they kind of get that mentality, but they're not doing all those preparatory things. And you never know when your health or your child's health or something could take a turn. So is this across industries, or is there something uniquely stubborn about us where we just stay in this business forever?
No, it's across industry. I mean, it's just a human nature that tomorrow's going to come and we'll be able to, do something tomorrow about what we should have done today. So it's a universal small business problem. It starts in the mind. If we could fix our mindset about things, we could fix a lot of stuff.
I couldn't agree more. I want to ask the flip side of that. What do you see that's going on in the industry that you're the most excited about for future of MSPs?
Well, one of the things that COVID did was really validate the importance of the MSP in the business world. So, and private equity has certainly come along and validated that it is a valuable part of the business world. So, while there's a lot of folks that are not in a position to have a great exit today, there is also a set of folks that are having really great exits today. And, that's an encouraging part of it. We can argue about whether private equity is good or bad or, whatever. They have validated the MSP industry as important and valuable. And, some of the exits that are happening are well beyond what anybody ever dreamed possible. So that's all good. The interesting part of people that are exiting, though, on the success side, is they get on the other side of that and they're lost. And part of the preparation for the future has to be, what am I going to do next? Because as business owners and founders and leaders, you don't just retire and sit in a chair. If you do, you're going to die. The common thing I'm told, almost everybody says it, I'm going to watch Netflix, I'm going to play golf, and I'm going to travel. And that's going to be my post-transition life. And about 60 days later, they're back saying, this is not fulfilling. I don't know why I get up in the morning anymore.
Yeah.
And so, that is really one of the flip sides to the challenge of not being able to have an exit. Is getting one without a plan is a real problem. I mean, a real problem. And, we've got a couple peer groups now focused on that. And the common theme is that they've lost their purpose, they've lost their identity, they've lost their relationships they've had daily. And you wake up to a Outlook calendar that's completely blank, and you don't know what to do because it's driven your life for the last number of decades. Yeah. You get up and the only person you see is your spouse, and you're used to going to the office where you've got these people around you, and all of a sudden it's lonely. So I've had people say I should have stayed in the business for that reason alone, because I don't know what to do now that I'm not in the business. You can work through that, but you gotta think about it and start before you're there and reacting, be proactive, and start to find some hobbies, start to find some friends outside of work, things that will continue once you do have an exit. And it takes time to do that. It really does.
Yeah, or in your case, start another business, or another business.
Interestingly, a lot of them start to be consultants, and they bring value to others. So there's nothing wrong with that. But it is the default. Let's just start something new.
Yeah. Is there with all your perspective, if you could change one, I guess, common mindset and amongst MSP owners, what What do you think would help them level up?
Well, I mean, I think from a business perspective, it would be having a growth mindset that's aligned to profitability so that you actually create a company that's got value that at some point somebody else will want to acquire.
Mm.
It's one of the other fallacies I see about that particular topic happens in family businesses. I've seen a couple cases in the last year now where parents have been working to build the business for their kids. Their kids have been in the business and they get to the point where they want to transition. And a couple of times now I've seen the kids say, I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't want it because it's not creating kind of revenue and profit that will sustain the lifestyle we want to have. And talk about really awkward moments. There's one, where there hasn't been good communication, so that's always a problem. But parents had one expectation. I've seen the same thing happen with a couple of MSPs that were building their business for their employees to take over. And in a couple of those cases, I've seen employees say, "Oh, I appreciate your effort, but this is not what we want to have happen." So you gotta build a company that has got value, and doesn't mean you have to be completely absorbed by money and all that kind of stuff. But you got to have a plan, right? You've got to know what you're trying to accomplish and have a roadmap for how you're going to get there, and then build a company and the leadership team you need to help get you to that point. People just have these expectations that hard work's going to mean I'm going to have what I want in the end, and it just isn't the truth.
You've accomplished so much, right? You've won the Lifetime Achievement Award. You've built and sold this MSP. You've got this global peer network, influenced thousands and thousands of leaders. What keeps you building new things and not just retiring to the farm? Like, what's your why at this stage?
My why is really just about investing in people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, making money doesn't matter really, but people do. And, there's certainly a faith component of that. I want to make sure that people have thought through their faith journey and have made decisions. Eternity is a very long time, so it's kind of important we get that right.
Mm-hmm.
But just investing in people and identifying, helping them identify their potential and learn and grow. I mentor some young guys, and they're asking the questions that I should have asked or did ask 30 years ago. But they're asking the questions, and they need somebody that they can learn from and at least have the experience of what not to do. So it's about people, Damien. That's my motivation, my driver, and people are what I want to be my legacy. Starting with my family, but there's a network of folks that I hope to have made a positive impact on, and we can really see that continue on into the future.
Yeah. I can speak from that personally. You have been kind enough to even, at an event or virtually as we're doing now, give me time and share your wisdom with others. I know that I've learned so much today. And just thank you for your time and your energy and your presence. And thank you so much for being on MSP Mindset.
Oh, it's been a joy, and thank you for doing the work, to capture the stories, what you're working on with your interviews with the 100 MSP owners. That's going to be invaluable to the industry, and so I'm grateful for people like you that are doing the hard work and really focused on helping educate and grow this industry. We got a long ways to go. When you think back, we've been MSPs for 20 years at most, and so we still got a long ways to go to really maximize what this thing can become. But it's only going to happen when people, like you, are doing the work to capture the stories, to glean the principles, and to share that with the world. And so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to, thank you for that. And I can relate to what you said. I learn on every one of these, so it's a blessing to me. But there is something about writing it that is a different experience to putting it that enables me to put it into action, because you can read all the books you want and listen to all the podcasts or YouTube. If you don't make any changes,
right?
If you don't change what's up here,
that's right.
There will be no difference.
It's the mindset.
Yeah. For folks that would love to reach out or connect or get on your thoughts, email, scripture, what's the best way to find you or connect with you?
Well, I'm obviously on the web all over the place, but we'll put the link in your video podcast post, and they can sign up for the newsletter if they would like to do that. I'm at ConnectWise, so any of the ConnectWise events, I'll be there and glad to connect and have conversation. So lots of ways to get to me: LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah, thank you for that. Make sure to take Arlin up on it. He's one of the most plugged in people, accessible people, and also, right, you just have an approachable nature, but largely due to your humility. So I thank you for that and what you've given me already.
Well, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, Damien, so I always am learning too. So I value the time I get to spend with people and learn from them.
Yeah. Thank you, Arlin. I appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.